can't go anywhere in America without being subject to that influence. It's everywhere. The role of women, the nature of work, the role of divinity, the nature of your soul. It's in and through the images of our culture. Of course, we're peeling this back. And so sometimes we don't even know that our whole time and attention has been given to these thoughts of restriction and limitation. It's not because we're bad people. We don't even know we're in a storm. And so we're peeling it back. And I think sometimes in metaphysics, the swing from the pendulum is like we're right over this side because, we realized we started with, I am nothing. Oh, I am everything. Life is terrible. Life is a fantastic event. Nature is dangerous. Nature is here for me to dominate and control. I'm born in sin. No, I am absolutely whole, perfect, and complete. And so now we're at this point where, well, actually there is a middle ground. It's not really black and white. It's all gray. It's more about just gathering in all of being and loving it. See the complexity of who I am, I have the potential for it all. I have the potential to create a philosophy that will dominate generations of people into thinking that they are worthless. I am the potential of creating a philosophy that will create people having all kinds of superficial ideas about wealth. I have all of that. You have all of that. Now we're looking at a deeper conversation. And so he helps us. He says, it is a great mistake to say, take what you wish, for you can have anything you like. We do not take what we wish. But we do attract to ourselves that which is like our thought. Perception, what's flowing through. He says, for us, we must become more if we wish to draw a greater good into life. That's what treatment is for. This whole idea, we must become more. It's like Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Become that. Let your life be your message, And so that's where these strategies like treasure mapping come in, creating visions for your life. What is that all about? Well, you're playing in consciousness, but you've had all this layering over. You're in a storm now. You're giving yourself permission to see yourself in a different way in the world, Sure, should you cut out pictures to help create the emotional connection to a larger idea? Of course you should, but in that moment where you cross the fence and you start to be committed to that outcome in a way that your hands are clenched to it, you've missed the point and the playfulness is gone. And you're concentrating in the same desperateness that my family member has is with you, and you are that close from creating your own personal hell. Because now your happiness depends on whether or not that picture translates into an outcome. Oh no! And then he really takes us deep, okay? This one's hard to hear. Because so many of us in that swing and trying to heal ourselves out of those early religious ideas, we are trying sometimes to escape from certain language. And there's a phrase in here that it's a button pusher. But this is it. And it's amazing that, we don't hear this so much in the popular version of metaphysics, but here it is, okay? And this teaching, it should not be confused with the idea that we can show people how to get what they want regardless. Just get ahead. I want a big car and use up lots of gas because I can. It's an abundant universe. No, it's not in here. Certainly not in here. It's not in here. Here it's coming. All right. This true prayer must be, thy will be done. See, Well, what is thy will be done? You know, some of us recoil from that. You think about God in the sky, the old idea, with some kind of plan for us that we do not want for our lives. No, not that kind of will. Thy will, God's will, is equal to reality. Life. Good. I don't know if you've read that Larry Darcy book about healing prayer with all of those studies, groups of people who prayed together for the various healing processes, people with cancer and that sort of thing. You know, some people knew they were being prayed for and some people weren't, etc. It was a fascinating read, but the thing that just shot out at me when I read that was, he said, it seemed to be that the most effective of all of the types of prayer were those ones that had thy will be done as the focus versus any particular outcome. Interesting. So he said, this is, you know how human he is? This is wonderful, this little part. How do we know what the will of God is? He says, we do not. Other than this, that the will of God cannot be death. Why? Well, we think that if we assume God to be the principle of life, then the principle of life cannot produce death without destroying itself. So we should therefore interpret the will of God to be everything that expresses life without hurt. And then he unfolds for us, I guess you can say, the ethics of metaphysics. Not just you can have what you want at any expense. Certainly not. It's like, you know, Paul said, all things are possible, but not all things are a good idea. So he says, anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it does not harm anyone, is the will of God for us. And as much as we can open to that, that's how much flows through us. So he's talking about still using prayer to open the aperture, which is why, like at Thanksgiving Eve, we sit down and say, how do I wish to see myself expressing this time next year? It's just a device. We're playing in consciousness. We know that by writing that down, we are not entering into anything more than an innocent playfulness with life. I want to expand my awareness, of course. And he says, you know, it's all about expressing more life. He says, the love of a mother for her children, a man for his wife, a patriot for the country, a preacher for religion, an artist for art. All of these, well, what are they? But they're just ways of self-fulfillment, and it's legitimate. And we realize that to attempt any kind of self-expression at the expense of society or another individual is to actually defeat the very purpose for which our freedom exists, because behind all of life there is a unity of which we are part and cannot escape, and so we are mixed up with each other and responsible for each other. And so what I want is significant. It's important. I can't just want what I want. Well, I can, but he will show us how to investigate that. So I move out of this isolated individual island of a being into this, we are one. He says, you know, it is quite a burden lifted when we realize that we do not have to move the world. It is going to move anyway. Yeah. This realization, however, does not lessen our duty or social obligation. It clarifies it. It enables us to do joyously and free from morbidity that which we should do in the social state. So see, when I read that, I realized he is aware that we exist on multiple levels. The level of the absolute all good, and on the social level. Just like it says in the Gita, hey, well, you know, you're in the world. So while you're in the world with all the spiritual learning, you might as well act honorably. And if your spirituality doesn't bring that to you, maybe it's worth investigating.